Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. This is Kelsey checking in today with Kyle Strickland. Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. So Kyle, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Kyle Strickland. Recently moved to Austin a couple of years back, interestingly enough, from India. We can talk about that maybe towards the end. Not one of those, California rush people coming in the last few months, but not that I don't love Californians. Lived there for a while myself. So I'm kind of a little bit of an entrepreneur type. I've done a lot of, consulting work as well. I have, two companies I'll be talking about a little bit today. So I've co-founded this company called M37 Ventures, and that's where, a lot of the consulting work comes from, and my experience working with really great founders and really innovative technologists, people who create amazing stuff. So the exposure we've had at M37 is really cool. I've also done a lot of startup-y stuff myself. I've launched a few companies. So as kind of a still, growing entrepreneur, that's where a lot of, kind of our discussion might lead today is some of the stuff we've done with this really cool company called Perdix Knowledge Management software.
Very nice. So how did Perdix really get started?
Yeah. So, like I said, M37 Ventures, we see people and, interesting technology all across the world and sometimes right in our own backyard. So here in Austin, we met with a group of people that deal with, flood insurance, FEMA, government insurance programs, and they do mostly contracting and consulting around those. An interesting story is that, they saw a really manual process happening in one of those government, federal flood insurance call centers. And so they created a small piece of technology to solve a big problem. It was basically people were flipping through paper on their desk, highlighting stuff, adding sticky notes to, I kid you not, 300-page insurance manuals, right? Yeah. And so they had the brilliant idea of, I think we have computers that can do this a little better. And so they developed some initial software. And a little while later, after it started to get adopted within that call center, a couple hundred people were using it every day and it was doing really well. They thought, I think we can make this bigger and better and share it with more of the world. So they eventually stumbled upon M37 Ventures, and I got connected up with Eric Howard, who's the EVP of H2O Partners. And we started talking about how we can create some structure and some, roadmap around the technology and build it up and make it a little bit bigger. And so that's what Perdix is now called. That's how Perdix was really started, is just that journey around saying, hey, we've got something here. Let's build a company around it. Let's build a solution around it, and let's see what we can do to bring this to more companies that might be having that same issue.
That's a really interesting, creation story coming from, a terrible event, but having a company that was able to respond to that in a way to streamline the process. I'm thankful that Eric was there to be able to help that process. And it sounds like it was a good connection for you folks to make that connection for you as well, being the entrepreneur you are.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think it was a great origin story for our company. It's been a little different than a few guys in the garage for sure. But over the last year, we've really developed a lot of interesting features around the existing, software that they had created. And I think the origin around how the insurance agents really use this is the key, the manual processes are things, basically related to knowledge management. So when you're trying to train a team, you're trying to have a single place for information. Usually it's hard to manage all that content and put it into one place. And so Perdix is really a knowledge management platform, you could say. So it has elements of a knowledge base, it has elements that are similar to SharePoint or Dropbox, asset management, so that your team members can go to one single source to find what they're looking for. using search and using some other features that we built in to get them right to what they want. So that's what knowledge management is in a nutshell.
So what makes Perdix stand out from other knowledge management, companies and softwares?
That is a good question. There's definitely a lot of knowledge management tools out there. You've heard of SharePoint. Everyone's heard of that. It's not necessarily a knowledge management platform, but a lot of people use it for that. It's a place to store documents, reference files, things that people need to do their job. What Perdix is all about is standing out from the crowd where there's a little bit more of content management. So articles that people will go to. When you think of knowledge base, you think of click through a long list of articles that needs to be constantly updated and, curated by at least one person, usually. So that content curation is a little bit different than what we do. We usually focus on the core assets themselves. So we're kind of a blend between a SharePoint and that KB system. So you can store your documents, but also use them as the actual assets to find answers. Our powerful search goes into the documents to find content that's relevant to what you're looking for and pulls that out. So you don't have to actually have a content manager to curate a whole knowledge base of information. And it just makes things a lot more simple in terms of long-term durability of that knowledge management system. So that's what we do that's really unique, that's not being done out there today in the market.
Wow, that's really interesting. So what industry would you say that Perdix falls into?
So we are a software company, and we're providing cloud-based, SaaS solutions. So everything that we provide is just accessible over the internet. And we really service the, more regulated industries. For instance, it might be insurance, like I mentioned, or healthcare, pharmaceuticals, public sector companies that, deal with lots of information that's a little bit more complex or set in stone, like policy documents, information about, different constituencies or, just different geographies. Those are the things that are really relevant to our software because of that, that impact, the emphasis, I would say, on, the text, like the policy documents and the information that's contained within those.
It sounds to me like you target, a few different, sectors. It sounds like one, there's that target towards the small to medium-sized businesses, but then also two, towards the more political sector. In regards to that, what would you say your target audience would be?
That's a good question. So I think everyone can use a central source of information. It would be great, no matter what role you're in, you're always like, where is that document? Where's this information? Perdix can be a little bit of a chameleon, fit a lot of use cases, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. However, I think the people that really, use Perdix the most are the operations type of people, the ones who have some, duty or some, activity that they need to do where it's like, hey, my next step depends on answering this question, or I have an inbound request. I'm not exactly sure what kind of product information to share with them. So that operations person or that support agent, anyone interacting with customers, we usually call that, CX, customer experience, people that have to do with the hand-holding and interactions. Those are the people that are kind of core demographic for users of the system.
So it sounds to me like if someone is trying to streamline their processes, Perdix is really, what they need to help streamline that and accelerate their processes. Am I hearing that right?
Totally. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your marketing. What does that currently look like?
So we just went to a big conference. This is, the biggest, I think, call center conference in the US called CCW in Las Vegas. And so that was a really big show. We actually just did our first sponsorship. So we got to talk to a lot of great people, meet some interesting folks and hear a little bit of, we thought, kind of messages that kind of reiterate our points that, these are things that you should focus on. And some of the content management aspects are really tough to uphold and keep going. So we heard a lot of things that, compounded our beliefs a little bit, supported our approach, which is really nice. So that is one way we are starting to interact with the community is through conferences like CCW. Um, and we're just starting to reach out a little bit more online because I think that our approach is something that we need to educate people on a little bit too. So, we're going to be working on a lot more, I'd say information sharing around, the concepts and the approaches that work best for these types of teams. Because we think that, a little bit of change in your approach can really, impact your operations efficiency. And that's something we want to be able to provide to our customers. So we'll be putting the word out a lot more through our blog and through some articles that we're going to be authoring soon here.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like there's a lot of education for Perdix for how to use the system, but also to brand awareness that Perdix is looking to build with you, talking about what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And it's something that the education, I think, is really focused on some of the concepts that are a little dated, you could say. Everyone thinks about information being stored in hierarchies, for instance. And so it's not necessarily only a tenet of Perdix, but just in terms of managing information, we've got to speak with a lot of knowledge management experts and being able to classify information in a way that's accessible in different ways. So you don't have this linear path to one document or one asset or one article, which, if someone has to reverse engineer or figure out every single time. If you have multiple ways to get to a piece of information, then you're able to, provide the information, not the correct way, but a more efficient way. So education around that is just principles that you can use within Perdix or without. There's ways that you structure your business assets and your information internally. Those are things that I think we can all learn from and benefit from, because it helps stuff not get lost as you grow and scale. And we've seen a lot of companies in our experience that just grow so fast that if you don't have those principles, down pat from the beginning, stuff could be lying in corners in the office. It could be in someone's desk. It could be in someone's brain, and it might not be where the new hire knows to look. If you don't solve that problem just with a little bit of maybe a tweak in your approach from the beginning. So those are things we want to be able to share as part of our journey too.
So would you, if you were able to give, your ideal flow of operation, would it be ideally to help them start up with the success and, come in when the company is getting up and going? Or do you also, help clean things up and come in towards the middle just to help with those operational processes as well?
That's a really good question. I think most companies, we are coming in helping, migrate and change over a little bit of the approach. However, our solution is not one of those rip and replace type of approaches where you have to completely abandon everything else and then move over to ours. That's something that we see and hear about a lot. That's really frustrating and hard to do. It takes months of effort. So we think of our solution as collaborative and additive. And as such, we're integrating with a lot of tools that already contain information. So you don't have to, spend all the time dragging and dropping things into a new database and then categorizing them. So there's ways that we approach integrating with your existing environment that make it really easy to adopt and grow Perdix within your organization, especially if you start with a small team that just really needs this. It doesn't have to be, basically have to have the entire company switch over everything overnight in order to be effective. So those types of solutions, especially in my experience as a founder and entrepreneur, if you can provide value right away and not have this massive undertaking, this long road ahead in order to get to that ROI, that is a pretty cool story. And so that's what we have made sure we offer from day one for any customer, whether they're starting from scratch and they're at ground zero, which is great, or they're coming in with, hey, we have 400 articles already. We have thousands of pieces of content, all these PDFs, all these training materials. Where do we start? We can work with that too. So
that's really interesting. So with that being said, how do you generate revenue? Is it a time and materials? Is it a monthly subscription? How does that work?
Yeah, so Perdix is a SaaS platform,
Mm-hmm.
so we do monthly revenues based on
Mm-hmm.
user counts.
Okay.
Right now, our pricing strategy is tiered. So as you go up in numbers of users, you have a less and less cost per user, and it gets down pretty low pretty quickly. So we have a really competitive setup for our pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things that we're promoting since CCW is a little bit of a discount to just getting started. So
Okay.
some of those first few months, we're really offering a great pricing strategy for new customers. And the cool thing about us is that so far we've not had to charge even a dime for any move-in services, which is
Wow.
that onboarding stuff. We
Wow.
sit with every single customer, and we have team members who understand taxonomy and understand data, and we can help migrate and set up the system to get started. And that's not an extra cost that we charge anyone to this point. And I would say, unless you have, a White House worth of documentation and we have to, migrate 20 terabytes, maybe we'll talk about something else. But for now, if you're a small company, you're starting up, like that's something we do as part of our kind of white glove service.
That's a really fantastic service, especially too for, companies who are looking to get started and migrate, who may not necessarily be in a position to, afford that. That's a really fantastic service to just out of the goodness of your own hearts, just to say, hey, we want to help. We're here to help. We're adding value up front to you, saying this is what we're doing. This is what we do. So with that education and reaching out to customers, if someone was listening to this, how would they go about finding Perdix and finding you?
Well, so far, the best place to go, you can go straight to perdix.us.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get a lot of really great, look and feel about how the platform, functions, some of the
Mm-hmm.
features that we've built in, and you'll be able to schedule time for, an introductory demo with me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to meet with me personally, that's the best way to do it. Just click the link on there. I'm interested in, seeing more. And I put together a custom demo for everyone who signs up for those. So I'll actually find some content that's relevant to your type of organization, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's insurance, like maybe it's a travel policy document. We'll upload a few of those and maybe some image assets and other things like that. So you can see how the system, searches and pulls out information the second you upload documents, which again, that's one of those big differentiators. I think with SharePoint, you don't really have search beyond the titles for the most part.
Yeah.
So, this is something that our, people signing up for demos see right away, that not only have I just put in something relevant to you, but I can also search for pieces of content within that document. That's pretty cool. And so if you want to see that, happen live, best way to do that is just go to perdix.us, sign up for a demo, and I'll show it to you.
That's fantastic. Perdix.us. I certainly wrote that down. Well, so Kyle, this has been a great conversation. I loved learning more about the collaborative knowledge management that you folks are doing, and being able to search beyond the title. I think that's very important in that white glove service that you implement, getting to know your customers, and really provide the migration and overall just relationship approach is fantastic. I do have one more question before you go. So what would be one thing, both personally and professionally, that you hope to be celebrating in this next year?
Well, personally and professionally, that's good. Well, I just started meditating. So
Oh, that's
personally,
amazing.
I want to be able to, successfully meditate every day and just have that be a consistent habit. That was a game changer for me the first time I actually sat down and my mind slowed down to the point where I wasn't feeling frantic. So personal, that's a big one. Professionally, I just want to see Perdix grow and user base and have great customers. That's one thing, but I also, want to share the journey with more people. So being able to bring on really talented people and grow our team, that's been a big focus for my year for Perdix. Aside from customer growth, is really people growth. So, finding really smart people who can help shape our tool, our features, and just think through all these amazing things that we have thought through but haven't pushed over the finish line and released yet. That would be really cool. So professionally, collaboration is one of my top goals.
I think those are both really good intrapersonal and intrapersonal goals to have moving forward in this next year. And I know that you're on the right path with M37 and with Perdix. So Kyle, it was great having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.